Good evening, and welcome to tonight's Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. Let me introduce some members of town government that assist this board. To my left is Simone Vogarty, Assistant Town Attorney. To her left is Blaise Donadio, a planner in the Planning Department. You're all here tonight seeking relief from the Smithtown zoning ordinances, and it's our job to try to help you achieve the relief you're requesting whenever possible. It's up to you to provide this board with precise and accurate information so we can make a decision based on the facts presented. This board must consider the 5 area variance considerations in order to render a decision, and they are as follows. Number 1, whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the variance. Number 2, whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than the area variance. Number 3, whether the requested area variance is substantial. Number 4, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in a neighborhood or district. And number 5, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created. Procedures for tonight's meeting. Cases will be called in the order they are advertised. When you are called, please present your certificates of postings and mailings to Mr. Donadio. Then you will be asked to go to the podium, where you'll state your name and address for the record, and then proceed to tell us why you need your variance. At the end of your presentation, if anyone in the audience would like to speak on your case, they will be given one opportunity to do so. Then the applicant can come back to the podium to answer their concerns. Once the public hearing is closed, no further information will be accepted concerning the case. There are 2 ways to find out about your case. You can call the planning office tomorrow after 12 p.m., or you can wait and be notified by mail. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first case on the agenda, case number 18917, Edward O'Brien, 32 John Quill Lane, Kings Park. The location of the property is the west side of John Quill Lane, 193 feet north of Primrose Lane. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum front yard setback from 40 feet to 37 feet for a proposed 133 square foot front portico, to reduce the minimum side yard setback from 12 feet to 9 feet, to reduce total side yards from 28 feet to 26 feet for a proposed 144 square foot front entry garage addition and a proposed 155 square foot first floor addition.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Thalheimer, 21 Center Street, Northport, New York.
I need the applicant first.
Good evening. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold.
That's okay.
My name is Edward O'Brien. I live at 32 Jonquil Lane, Kings Park, New York.
Would you like this gentleman to speak on
I
your behalf?
certainly would. Thank you.
Fine. Thank you. Now, sir.
Would you like me to repeat that?
Yes, please.
Sure. Jeff Thalheimer, architect, 21 Center Street, Northport, New York.
Do you need? Oh, okay.
Okay. My client and also the applicant, Edward O'Brien, has owned the property at 32 Jonquil Lane, Kings Park, also known as Section 30, Block 1, Lot 52, for over 20 years. The property is located in the R10 zone. Mr. O'Brien has been a lifelong resident of Smithtown. In fact, he grew up in the house that we're now seeking variances for tonight. The house has not been significantly altered or any additions made since that time. It is my client's desire to make the house more comfortable for his family. The scope includes taking space from the existing garage and adding onto the kitchen, also creating a mudroom and bringing the laundry up from the basement. In addition to the garage, would be created to regain the lost space. The only feasible way to add onto the house is to the south side. We are asking for the minimum in order to achieve this goal. A roof over front portico is planned as well for curb appeal. The variances we were seeking are as follows. A front yard setback of 37 feet for roofed over portico, where 40 feet is required. A side yard setback of 9 feet for the addition, where 12 is required. And a total side yard of 26 feet, where 28 feet is required. This benefit sought by the applicant cannot be achieved by some other method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance. The request is not substantial and the difficulty is not self-created. The proposed variance will not have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions of the neighborhood. In granting the requested relief, there will not be an undesirable change to the character of the neighborhood or will it cause a detriment to nearby properties. In support of our application, a letter from the adjoining neighbor to the south, who is most affected by the proposed work. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Planning?
No, thank you.
Excuse me. Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So move.
Second?
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
May I
Thank you.
submit that letter?
If you'd like, I will
Sure.
put it in the record.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is this it?
Yeah.
The next case on the agenda is case number 18919, Daniel Gonzalez, 166 Fifth Avenue, Kings Park. The location of the property is the west side of Fifth Avenue, 83 feet north of Marvin Drive. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting variances to decrease the minimum setback of a 2-foot retaining wall from the property line from 3 feet to 0, to decrease the minimum setback of a 6-foot fence from a 2-foot retaining wall from 2 feet to 0, to increase the height of a 6-foot fence on top of a 2-foot retaining wall from 6 feet to 8 feet.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Deborah Yelvington. That's Y-E-L-V as in Victor, I-N-G-T-O-N, Dynamic Permits, agent for the owner, Mr. and Mrs. Gonzalez, with power of attorney submitted.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. I'd like to just give a little history on this property. Mr. and Mrs. Gonzalez have owned this property only since last fall. In October, they purchased it, and they purchased it from an estate. We are requesting to maintain the relief 24-inch high retaining wall that is 0.6 feet from the south side property line in lieu of the required 3 feet setback, and 1.2 feet from the rear west property line instead of the 3 feet required. This house was originally CO'd back in 1953, and again, it was in 2022 that my clients purchased it just 5 months ago. Now, the homeowner obtained a proper fence permit, which is required around his pool, and he went down to the building department and received that fence permit. When he went to install the fence, he realized how uneven the back corner of the property was, and he thought it's going to be kind of a jagged installation on that fence, wavering if he doesn't even it out on the grade. He called the building department and said, I'd like to do a retaining wall. It's only going to be 18 to 24 inches high. Do I need a permit? And of course, they said, no, you don't need a permit for a retaining wall that short. However, he didn't say that he was putting a fence on top of it or right in front of it. So unfortunately, it wasn't until after that came about, or there was an inspector on the property, that it got noted that he had the fence on top of this short retaining wall. So we submitted property photos, and you can see around the pool there's a brick walkway that is pretty broken up, uneven from over the years, and that slanting, sloping property. So he's looking to resolve that hazardous walking condition, as well as making a more aesthetic appearance on that fence by having a flat grade instead of the sloping that it was down towards that back south property line. So the retaining wall, there's photos of it there. You can see it's ever so slight under the white fence. There's no detriment to the neighborhood. The appearance, I think, actually improves it, and it cannot be seen from the street. And the neighboring property that would be looking at that fence. There's growth, they've got their own fence and deck on that area, so it's not out in the open, and it gives a better appearance from the neighbor's property as well. So we're looking to maintain that if we can be approved, to make it in a safe condition instead of the hazardous sloping property, which he has already evened out. Again, it won't have an adverse impact on the neighborhood, and it is self-imposed, but again, he thought he took all precaution by contacting the building department and just didn't understand the scope of what he was doing with the retaining wall underneath the fence that he had been replacing. So he's done improvements to the property. They're a young couple taking this over, and we're requesting to be allowed to maintain that as they're only doing improvements and bringing really more asset to the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
Planning?
No, thank you.
Brenda? Nothing? Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you. I have the next case, I think, so I'll stay.
I'm sorry?
I have the next case, so I'll stay here.
Oh, okay.
Debbie, the cases aren't going in order. The Beasley's case isn't being heard until later in the agenda.
Sorry, when we checked in, we heard that they were together.
Now,
Okay, can you tell me what number that is down there?
it is going to be second to last, number 8.
Would it change anything if I had a plane to catch? No, I'm just kidding.
That's the chairman.
I gave you that envelope, that's okay, though.
That's fine. We're all good?
What's that?
We're all good? Yeah. Okay. The next case on the agenda, case number 18920, Robert Carlucci, 32 Seminole Drive, Comac. The location of the property is the southwest corner of Seminole Drive, and I don't even know how to say that, Algonquin Lane. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting a variance to reduce the minimum rear yard from 50 feet to 37 feet for a proposed 250-square-foot second-story deck.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Vincent Tremarco. I represent the applicant. We've submitted the affidavits of posting and mailing to Mr. Donadio. As you can see from the site plan submitted, we propose to put a second-story deck on the back of, they call it a split level, but it's more like a high ranch. It's on the second story. This is a corner property, but as you can see, the deck is nowhere near encroaching on Algonquin Lane. It's set back more towards the other side of the property. However, even on that side, there's a 13.6 side yard between where the deck would go and the neighbor, Mr. and Mrs. Rodriguez. The deck is on the second story. It's an open deck, so we're not really adding any living space. The purpose of the deck would be for the use and enjoyment of Mr. and Mrs. Carlucci, also to look down on their swimming pool. As you can see, between the proposed deck and the pool is a concrete patio, and after the deck, on the back of the Carlucci's property and on the side yard of another existing property, there's going to be planters or existing planters there. So it really has no adverse effect on the character of the area. I am told that there are many high ranch type split level houses with second story decks. Whether we can put this deck somewhere else no, this is the only logical place. Obviously, it's in the back of the house on the second floor. Whether the requested variance is substantial, I think you can see that it's not. The only request is the reduction of the rear yard. It doesn't affect FAR in any way, and there are no other variances requested. Whether there's any environmental effect, I don't think there's any environmental effect. It's a wood deck, and that's basically it. Whether this was self-created, no, they proposed this deck. They're asking this board for permission to build the deck. So obviously, there isn't any self-created hardship. And I guess that's it. If the board has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right, thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Planning?
No, thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
The next case on the agenda is case number 18921, Jared Regatta, 2 Louise Court, Nesconset. The location of the property is the southwest corner of Louise Court and Francis Street. The property is owned R15. The applicant is requesting a variance to reduce the minimum front yard setback from 15 feet to 12 feet for an existing 27-square-foot front portico.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. Jared Regatta, 2 Louise Court, and I am granting permission for Eileen Rowan to speak on my behalf.
Well, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Eileen Rowan. I'm from Rowan Permit Expediting, located in Quorum. I'm the agent for the applicant. ROWAN. We're requesting a variance for an existing roof over entryway. The entry is 4 feet by 6.7 feet. The application was denied for a front yard setback, 12 feet existing, 15 feet allowed. Under Town Zoning Code Section 322-9B. However, there is a section of the Town Zoning Code, Section 322-15-6, that allows for a 6 by 6 foot encroachment into the front yard for an entryway. The entry is 2 feet shorter than allowed in one direction and 8 inches longer in the other. 36 square feet is allowed for a roof over entry encroachment, wherein this entryway is 27 square feet, 9 square feet under allowable. So basically, we are here before the board because we exceed the allowable encroachment by 8 inches. The applicant was unaware when he constructed this that there was a size restriction or that a permit was required, as there is no living space. The dwelling is located on a dead end, so I propose that there is no detriment to the neighborhood. There was no other way for them to have a covered entry except to encroach. It's a minimal variance, basically, of 8 inches. And the applicant has spoken to some of his neighbors, and they are all in favor of his application. So does the board have any questions?
Thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application? No. Planning?
No, thank you.
Sabrina? Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? No. Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
The next case on the agenda, case number 18922, Alfred Leone, 37 Bruce Lane North, Kings Park. The location of the property is the east side of Bruce Lane North at the terminus of Norma Lane. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum front yard setback from 50 feet to 48 feet for a proposed 756-square-foot first-floor addition, to increase the maximum permitted paved surface in the rear yard from 25% to 30% for a proposed paver patio.
Good evening.
Good evening. Hello, my name is Alfred Leone. I live at 37 Bruce Lane North, Kings Park, with my wife Denise. My family and I have lived in this home since 2009. In 2022, we looked to move to get a larger home, but we love the location in Kings Park so much that we wanted to stay. So we decided to do a renovation. We are looking to have a variance to reduce the minimum rear yard from 50 feet to 48 feet for a proposed 756 square foot first floor addition and increase the max permitted paved surface in the rear yard from 25% to 30% for the proposed paver patio. We are looking to expand our home to make it a more functional space for me and my family and my daughter. We have no one behind us that would be affected by the renovation. Without the 2 feet, we cannot achieve this renovation. Any questions?
I'll ask. Excuse me. Anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
Planning?
No, thank you.
Anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Motion's been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice evening.
The next case on the agenda is case number 18924, Sean and Mariposa Fagan, 89 Witchard Boulevard, Comac. The location of the property is the north side of Witchard Boulevard, 1,621 feet east of Jill Court. The property is owned R21CL. The applicant is requesting a variance to decrease the minimum setback of a 4-foot retaining wall from the rear and side property lines from 4 feet to 0 for a proposed 160-foot-long retaining wall.
Good evening.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Douglas Viola. I reside at 27 Singingwood Drive in Holbrook. I am representing for Sean and Mariposa Fagan. I have the power of attorney here, and yep, you want me to hand this in now to you, or as soon as I'm done?
Mailing receipts and the affidavits too, yeah.
You good? Okay.
Thank you. I'm here tonight representing for Sean and Mariposa Fagan at 89 Wickard Boulevard in Comac. I am the contractor who will be installing the retaining wall. While installing their patio around their pool, it became apparent that the grade of the property was dropping off much more, and we wanted to raise the height of the retaining wall. After calling the town and speaking to the building department, we decided the correct course of action for them and what was needed for this property was to extend the wall in height, and the customer then proceeded to ask to have the wall built near the property line so they wouldn't have that 4-foot gap. Placing the retaining wall 3 to 4 feet off the property line would defeat the purpose of the retaining wall as the property drops off all the way to the property line. Putting the retaining wall a few inches off the line to ensure it will not go over the line will prevent that from happening. The wall will range in height from 24 inches high at the back of the property to 42 inches high at the back east corner, tapering off to 30 inches as it comes along the east side toward the front. The wall will not be visible from the street or any of the neighbors' yards. Will be completely fenced as required for the in-ground pool. It most certainly does not cause detrimental damage to any neighboring property. It only has beneficially factors. The wall, no one will be affected by this project as well.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Does anybody on the board have any questions on this application?
I do. I actually noticed in the picture in the back what appears to, are those Mafia block?
Those were removed away.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
we're-
not what the new wall's gonna be made
The
of.
new wall will be made out of Nicolak Alta Pro wall, engineered wall block with drainage built behind it as well.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Anyone else? No. Planning?
No, thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
You too.
The next case on the agenda is case number 18925, Kenneth Lysak, 12 Ron Court, Comac. The location of the property is the southeast corner of Ron Court, and I guess Ron Court. The property is owned R15. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum front yard setback from 45 feet to 41 feet for a proposed natural gas-fired generator, to increase the maximum permitted paved surface in the front yard from 25% to 30% for an existing driveway and paving.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Cole Gartmare from HLS Expediting. All the appropriate affidavits have been submitted for me to represent. Gartmayer. You're welcome. HLS Expediting is located at 180 Gloria Boulevard, Hauppauge, New York, 11788. We're agents representing Kenneth Lysak, owner of 12 Ron Court, Comac, New York, 11725, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 148-3-10. This property is in an R15 zone. So an application was filed for a proposed gas-fired generator to be placed that does not maintain the minimum front yard setback of 45 feet. We're proposing 41 feet. This is actually in line with an existing AC unit, and as you can see from the property survey and from the photos, it's actually on a portion of the front yard that is fenced in. There's some landscaping as well, so there's not going to be really any visibility from the neighborhood. Should not pose any type of detriment to the neighborhood either. My client did look at just installing a portable generator. However, those are much noisier. So in the effort to try to keep something that would be as quiet as possible, he went with the actual one that you have to install and keep there that's not portable. At the time of filing the application, it came about that the actual paved surface area is in excess of what's allowed. What's allowable is 25. What's existing is 30. My client purchased the home in 2003. The paved surface area is just part of a bump out to the two-car driveway. And it's been existing there since 2003. The property's maintained very beautifully. We don't feel that this is out of character for the neighborhood or posing any harm to anybody there, and it wasn't self-imposed as that was existing.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
Planning?
No, thank you.
Sabrina?
Yes, I do. Mr. Chairman, the survey submitted by the applicant indicates the following encroachments. A portion of the existing stone retaining wall along the driveway encroaches 4.3 feet onto the town right-of-way to the west. A portion of the existing stone retaining wall planter encroaches 4.1 feet onto the town right-of-way to the north. And the existing pool equipment, fence, stone curb, walk, and landscaping all encroach into the town drainage easement to the south. DEW recommends that any approval include a condition which requires the removal or legalization of these encroachments. Thank you.
Do you understand all of that?
Yes.
Okay. So you have to get rid of those encroachments.
Okay.
All right.
We'll discuss those with our client, and, you know, we will look to resolving those matters.
Okay, fine. Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.
The next case on the agenda, excuse me, is case number 18918, Ping Beasley, 16 Washington Boulevard West, Comac. The location of the property is the south side of Washington Boulevard West, 295 feet east of Kings Park Way. The property is zoned R21. The applicant is requesting a special exception to permit temporary living quarters for a parent and a variance of a special exception standard to increase the size of temporary living quarters from 600 square feet to 891 square feet.
Good evening.
Good evening, Deborah Yelvington of Dynamic Permits, agent for the owner, Ping Beasley, and our power of attorney has been submitted with our receipts. A little bit of history on this property. It is zoned R21, and the 1960s original home was a single-story ranch style with a full basement, which actually was exposed in the back, allowing some doors and light in that sense. The prior owner had finished the basement, and the Beasleys purchased the house with that already done in 1998. They grew up their family there. However, in 2016, Mr. Beasley passed away suddenly. Mrs. Beasley did not get to be the administrator of the estate until 2018. And Mrs. Beasley has her godson, who she's been raising, live with her in the home, and he will be using the temporary living quarters if we are approved for that. The 2022 architect plans have been submitted, showing the entire house. The basement layout remains with the open recreation room for the main house as a single-family dwelling. And then it also shows a portion for temporary living quarters for Mrs. Beasley's godson. The site plan and photos can show that there's nothing objectionable about the property. And we would like to submit 3 affidavits of neighbors that are right near the home, giving their support. And I'd like to read those addresses of the neighbors into the record before I submit them in. They are number 15 Washington Boulevard, number 17 Washington Boulevard, and number 20 Washington Boulevard, all giving their support to Mrs. Beasley to be able to have the temporary living quarters and to have the increased living space to 812 square feet for that temporary living quarters, and I'll submit those to you.
Thank you.
The temporary living quarters would be temporary, so that it's only for Ms. Beasley, as she, as the widow of the home, looks to stay in that home and keep her godson and her stepson there as needed. So we request that. She's kept up the home, and she's looking to only have the family stay with her, and we request that she be allowed to do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
Not at this time, no.
Okay. Planning.
Mr. Chairman, the Planning Department prepared a planning advisory report, and after reviewing the application, we made a recommendation to approve.
Mr. Chairman, the application materials do indicate that the existing septic system is non-compliant for the current use of the property and requires replacement. DEW recommends that the board withhold action on this application pending receipt of a decision from the Department of Health We have notified the applicant's representative of their need to contact the Department of Health. Therefore, no decision will be made tonight on this application. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Understood. We are working with an engineer for that sanitary design as the next step, that she would be able to enlarge or replace her sanitary system.
Okay, fine, so there'll be no action tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience, excuse me, is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
The next case on the agenda is case number 18923, HPG Properties, 284 Indian Head Road, Kings Park. The location of the property is the northwest corner of Indian Head Road and Old Northport Road. The property is zoned LI. The applicant is requesting variances to increase the maximum area of a ground sign from 32 square feet to 76 square feet, to increase the number of wall signs from a maximum of 1 to 3 for a previously approved 10,000 square foot commercial building. And you're good with that, right? Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Anthony Guardino, partner with the law firm of Farrell Fritz, Hauppauge, New York, representing the applicant HPG Properties, which owns the property located at 284 Indian Head Road in Kings Park. The applicant is before you tonight seeking sign variance relief for a ground sign and 2 wall signs associated with the Learning Center daycare or child care center. The property is about a little more than 2.5 acres, located in the northwest corner of the intersection of Indian Head Road and Old Northport Road, as was mentioned. The zoning, of course, light industry. Property is under construction. The building is up. It's just about done, but it is not totally complete. There's still some site work, paving, et cetera, that has to be completed. You know, I think this is a major, the facility is a major upgrade. I mean, it's amazing. I was thinking about, I've lived in this town for 60 years. That site has oddly always been vacant. And, you know, really the southern gateway to Kings Park, and would have thought that something would have been developed there over all these years, and it hasn't. And, you know, it was used, I guess, as an illegal dumping ground for many, many years, and now it's, you know, it looks real nice, and it'll be even nicer when it's completed. It is a welcome addition to the area. The area is characterized, as you all know, by mostly industrial uses, some commercial uses. To the north and east, you have Plycon Transportation Group. To the west, you have the solar farm. To the south, there's a town recharge basin that's on the south side of Old Northport Road. And then further up the hill, there is, I think it's Country Woods Development, and there's an area there that's owned by the Homeowners Association. It acts as a buffer. My client is seeking relief to install a non-illuminated ground sign and the 2 wall signs. The monument sign that's proposed is 76 square feet. The code only allows 32 square feet. But this includes, the measurement, of course, as you know, includes the decorative structure, so it's not just the sign. Excuse me, the actual sign panel that my client is proposing there is only 15 square feet, so it's much smaller. The structure, though, is large, you know, by comparison to the panel, and the reason for that is that the sign is contemplating a second use. As you can see, there's only part of the property is being developed. My client anticipates a second use being developed on the property, and their sign would go on the same, you know, in the decorative structure. The 2 variances that are needed to increase the number of wall signs from 1 to 3 are to allow 2 small wall signs along the entrance pillars that are both, one's 9 square feet and one is 10 square feet. And in your booklet, because well, the signs aren't up, but the structure is already up. I was there today. If you look at image number 3, exhibit number 3, you'll see the colors along the posts around the entranceway. That's the second and third sign. And what there's being proposed is, if you go to the back of the book, in the sign plans, is that they anticipate, they anticipate, I think one sign is going to be numbers on the blocks, and the other side will be letters on the blocks. Yeah, like this. Sorry, here. Which you can see, that's Exhibit 6. So it's not a sign yet, but it will become a sign once they put the numbers, if this board approves that application, or numbers and letters if the board approves the application. With respect to the variance criteria, I'll go through it very quickly. There will not be an adverse impact upon the surrounding neighborhood as a result of the variances. As mentioned, the property is located in the LI Industrial District. It fronts on portions of Indian Head Road and Old Northport Road that are characterized by a number of industrial and commercial uses. There are no residential uses in close proximity to the site. I believe that the site with the new signage will be an attractive improvement to the area, to the roadscape, and to the surrounding neighborhood. None of the variances are quantitatively substantial, and those that require more significant relief are not qualitatively substantial. The three, the signs to allow the additional wall signs are necessitated by the limitation on only one sign, but these signs are very, very small, 9 square feet and 10 square feet on the colored blocks. And the variance to allow the non-illuminated ground sign of 76 square feet where 32 square feet is permitted, while it appears maybe to be substantial, it needs to be larger to accommodate the second sign. And again, it's because the sign is measured to include the decorative part of the sign, that makes the variance look greater than it actually is, because, as I mentioned, the sign panel for the Learning Center is only about 15 square feet, or less than half of what the code actually requires. No feasible method to achieve the proposed development on the site other than the required variances, because the ground sign and wall signs are necessary to maintain the Learning Center's brand and its identity, to properly identify the site. It will not have a significant adverse impact on the physical or environmental conditions of the neighborhood. As I mentioned, this site has been vacant for many, many years. It was a dumping ground. There's nothing historically significant, or I should say environmentally significant on the site. And now it's basically fully developed. And then lastly, the alleged difficulties, I submit, are arguably self-created because my client knows the code coming in, but a finding of self-created hardship is not dispositive, as this board knows. And that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
Planning?
Thank you.
Sabrina? Nope. Anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Have a motion to close the application, please.
So moved.
Motion was made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. Nice to see you all.
The next case on the agenda is case number 1-18291, Stephanie and Cody Swing, 96 Core Road, Kings Park. The location of the property is the west side of Core Road, 318 feet north of Gilmer Lane. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting variances to increase the maximum permitted paved surface in the side yard, which is existing, from 25% to 100%. To reduce the minimum distance from a lot line from 1 foot to 0 for existing paving, to expand an existing lawful nonconforming structure, to reduce the minimum rear yard setback from 50 feet to 27 feet, which is existing, to reduce the minimum side yard setback from 12 feet to 2 feet, which is existing, and total side yards from 28 feet to 9 feet for a begun prior 284 square foot second floor addition to a lawful, nonconforming predated second dwelling.
Good evening.
Good evening. Hello again. My son's running a little late, but my name's Robert Swing. I think you guys are all familiar with this application. You know, we're looking just to get that doghouse approved. Everything else is already existing. So you have the proper plans now that, we made sure before we came back that the board had the proper plans for this project. Just to remind everybody, last time we were here, you guys had the plans that had
The full
the
dormer.
dormer, right?
Yeah.
So this should reflect that that's not there.
Right. This gives your neighbors some relief. There's no windows or anything on that side.
Correct, correct. And he can attest for that, he's here.
It's what we asked for. Okay. Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application? Planning?
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman, that the application has been pending before the board for quite some time. There was an issue that was brought up by the adjacent neighbor to the north regarding privacy issues. Mr. Swing has revised the plans, as you can see up on the screen and the plans in front of you, indicating that any dormers to the north have been removed. There's only one existing dormer now to the south, which is not impacting the neighbor to the north. So at this time, we don't have any further comments.
Fine, thank you. Nothing? Excuse me. Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Thank you,
Second?
guys.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
The next case on the agenda is case number 18614, Pristine Properties USA LLC, also known as Mitsubishi, 1158 Jericho Turnpike, Comac. The location of the property is the south side of Jericho Turnpike, State Route 25, 400 feet east of Mayfair Terrace. The property is owned WSI. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum parking from 173 to 102 spaces, to eliminate the required 3-foot curb cut radius, to eliminate the required landscape islands for a proposed 12,427 square foot first floor addition and 14,004 square foot second floor addition to an existing 5,273 square foot car dealership.
Good evening.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the board. My name is Jessica Nowak, that's Nowak, and I am the attorney for the applicant Pristine Properties USA. We were before you on March 28th. I'm going to submit the affidavit of posting to Blaze, as well as the updated conceptual site alignment plans. As noted, we were before this board on March 28th. Since then, we've had several conversations and meetings with the planning department to devise a plan to come up with how to properly put in the curbing and/or retaining walls that were requested by this board at the prior hearing. We took note from the town. We are in process of having a topographical survey completed. We took available information to look at the grading on the property, and the town noted to avoid any potential height variances with respect to retaining walls in that southeast portion of the property that you see on the plans, that the client should regrade that property, taking it out about 15 feet, so it would increase the buffer on that southeast corner. My client is willing to do that in order to avoid any future variances. And this is a proposed conceptual plan at the moment until we have the topographical survey in hand. But it would note that there would be a retaining wall on that southeast corner, and the rest would be curbing along the buffer as requested by the board. And yes, that concludes the presentation. Those are the updates that we had. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
I just want to thank you for taking our comments and making some a nice job of protecting the interests of the people to the south of this site.
Thank you.
Planning.
Just to bring the board up to speed, as everybody is aware, the biggest issue that planning had, and I think the board had with respect to this application, was the grade in the rear property line where the buffer had been reestablished. Particularly in the southeast corner, there was quite a steep slope that was creating a problem in terms of being able to utilize the outdoor storage area. There were some instances where there were some vehicles parked on it. I don't think that we were too pleased about that, and we were certainly concerned about storm water runoff, erosion, and things like that. So we made a recommendation to the applicant that they, in the southeast corner, extend the buffer or the area to be utilized as buffer area to be extended a little bit further north, whereby they could put in a retaining wall or a high curb to hold any soil erosion back. Also to better delineate the outdoor storage area in terms of where you can park vehicles. As Jessica said, they're still waiting on a final topographical survey of the property, so there probably will be some minor changes to the plan after that time. However, moving forward from this point, planning feels that we're confident that the board could, if when the time comes, the board could take action on the application, and any further requirements, review, or any changes, amendments to the site plan could be made during the site plan review process.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, DEW wishes to consider information presented by the applicant as well as any new comments received from the public before making a recommendation to the board, so no decision will be made tonight. Thank you.
So there'll be no decision tonight.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? You have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second?
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
One more, I guess Prado's not in. Yeah.
They got to be out there somewhere. Prado?
The next case on the agenda, case number 18898, Prado 850, 204 Jericho Turnpike, Comac. The location of the property is the west side of Jericho Turnpike, 125 feet south of Walter Court. The property is zoned CB. The applicant is requesting a variance of an outdoor dining standard to permit walls higher than 4 feet.
Is the applicant here? No.
Just some information for the board. We have been in contact with the applicant's architect/engineer, who is working on revisions to the site plan. We were anticipating having a letter for the board tonight requesting an adjournment. We haven't received one, so it's at the board's discretion at what date you'd like to adjourn it to.
June 27th? You think that gives them enough time to?
I believe so.
All right. Case number 18898, Prado 850, has been adjourned to June 27th. And that concludes our meeting for tonight.